Welcome back, everybody. We're here at the Landmark Hotel in Carrick-on-Shannon. Next up, we have a very interesting speaker, Joe Kelleher. He's the organic dairy specialist in Teagasc, and we're running a little behind time. So, Joe, I'm going to push you up to the podium. Off you go to give your presentation, please.
Thank you, Hannah. So, my presentation, I'm going to give an overview, maybe of where we are from an organic point of view with regard to the processing capacity in this country. We'll look at where we are now, where we're going, and we'll also look at the kind of profile of the dairy farmer organic dairy farmer that's out there at the moment, and maybe where the future might lie for farmers that are thinking about converting to dairy or to organic dairy. So if we look at the processing side of the view at the moment, there are 5 processors that are processing organic milk at the moment. So we've Arabon, Revo, Glenisk, the Little Milk Company, and the Village Dairy in Carlow. So there's a good variety of processors, and they're geographically well located across the country. Of those, there's 4 of them that are in the liquid milk business, which means they want a 12-month constant supply of milk. So you would have to be in a winter milk or autumn calving situation for those. And there's one that are processing cheese, which allows them to accept the spring calving system, and that's the Little Milk Company. So you can be both systems in organic, and that is important to know. So if we dig in a bit deeper into the profile of these processors, there's approximately 80 organic dairy farmers in the country at the moment. Of those, there's probably about 15 to 20 are still in their conversion process. So there are 65 fully converted organic dairy farmers in the country at the moment, and you'll see there the breakdown between the suppliers of those. If we look at where the milk is going, that's ending up in the process of Arabon. Their main outlet would be they'd be supplying Aldi with their organic milk. Revo would be supplying Lidl, SuperValu, Dunn's, Tesco. Glenisk have obviously their own brand milk, which is sold in SuperValu, Dunn's, Tesco primarily, and obviously then their yogurt is one of the biggest sellers of all the organic products across the processors. The Little Milk Company, the majority of their milk is converted into cheese, which is typically exported to primarily America, Germany, France would be the big outlets for them. And then the Village Dairy, they're primarily into milk, which ends up in the baristas in Dublin is a big outlet for their milk, but also at the Gino's Gelato ice cream is one of their big outlets as well as having the milk on the shelf in some of the major retailers as well. So again, that's just giving you a breakdown of the variety of products that are out there in terms of the organic liquid milk market. Again, it's a small country we're in, with a population of around 5 million, so the opportunities maybe to grow this are possibly, there's a limit on how far you can push this. If we expand this, obviously we're displacing conventional milk, but nevertheless, there is an opportunity to expand that liquid milk market. There's probably opportunities there for more direct selling. It's quite limited at the moment. There is a lot of people looking at it. There probably is opportunities there as well to grow that market. There's also opportunities for the smaller retailers maybe to grab a share of this market. I was in a Centra yesterday and I saw 20 different types of milk for sale on the shelf. I could buy full fat, low fat, skimmed milk, buttermilk. I could buy all the alternative products, the oats, the almonds, the soyas, but you couldn't buy organic. So there is opportunities there for more of the smaller type retailers maybe to look at stocking organic milk. So yes, there is scope to expand it, but there is a limit on how much this can contribute to the organic liquid market. Where I probably would like to see maybe more of the growth areas would be in the added value products, where it's probably what has made conventional dairy so successful is that they turned the milk into added value products, and that's why it has got to the stage of where it is. So if we look at the Village Dairy in Carlow providing Gino's Gelato with the ice cream, Glenisk, obviously the yogurt is a huge seller for them. The bottom left there is the Bohunna, that's the Glenisk grass-fed organic yogurt, which is a big seller in Austria and Germany. And then you've the Little Milk Company with the cheese. So if we can convert the milk into more of these type products, I think this is where the future opportunities and the growth areas really lie. So if we look at this picture, there's 2 tins of infant formula on that slide. And if I told you one of those had Irish milk in it and the other one didn't, which one would you be inclined to think had the Irish milk in it? You'd be thinking it's the Aptimal maybe, but the reality is the one on the right with the Chinese writing on it is made in Charleville in County Cork, and that's sold in Beijing at multiples of what it would be sold here. And that's conventional Irish dairy powder that's inside of that. And the one on the left can be bought in most supermarkets in Ireland, but that's most likely French or Danish milk that's inside in it, because there is no one doing organic infant formula in this country. So we're one of the biggest infant formula producers in the world. I think we're account for 15 to 20% of all the infant formula that's produced in the world in Ireland, conventionally. But there's no one doing organic infant formula. So there's huge opportunity there. Yes, it requires one of the major co-ops probably to take an interest in it and to put a bit of investment into a dryer, which is a significant investment. Or alternatively, there are co-ops out there that have maybe smaller scale dryers that could be repurposed to look at this. So hopefully we will see one of the larger processors, conventional processors, taking an interest in this area and seeing it as a way of adding to their business. The other areas is, again, the one on the right is well-recognised brand, Kerrygold. There's €1 billion worth of Kerrygold exported from this country every year. So it's one of the huge success stories of the conventional dairy sector in this country. Huge brand, especially in America and Germany. But you go into any organic food store in Ireland and try buy a pound of organic butter, and you'll struggle to get Irish butter. That one on the left is one I bought in an organic store there recently, and it's Danish butter. So there's little or no, bar there's a few small scale artisan producers doing organic butter. There's no one doing it on any significant scale in this country. So it's not that we don't know how to do it. We have a huge history of making butter in this country, and it's what we do very well. So there's a huge opportunity there for one of the processors ideally to tap into this market. So that's a very quick overview of the processing side of view of where it's at and where it could potentially go. So let's kind of go inside the farm gate now and see what's actually happening in terms of organic dairy farms in this country. I suppose I'm relatively new to this job. I'm only in as an organic specialist in 18 months, and what amazed me most is, even though there's a very small pool of organic dairy farms, is the variety of systems that there are within that pool. So often I get asked the question, can you profile an average organic dairy farmer for us? And it's not easy to do because there is such a variety of systems out there. So in an attempt to try and analyse these systems, I've broke down here in terms, and I've ranked on the basis of the amount of concentrate usage across the systems. And even within these, there's a lot of subsystems within these. So if we look at the left of the chart there, you see the zero meal inputs are very low anyway. We'd have farmers doing, you'd have things like Korean natural farming, we've mob grazing, we've short grass grazing systems. Glenisk have that grass-fed yogurt product, which those farmers are allowed to use products like Lucerne, but there would be very, very minimal amounts of concentrates going on to those. So there's a cohort of farmers there that are using almost zero meal inputs. They're spring calving systems. A lot of them might be on once-a-day systems also with that. So they're one cohort of farmers. Then you have the once-a-day spring calving system on top of that. These typically would be supplying the little milk company. They would be probably somewhere between 200 and 400 kilos of meal input across the year. Very simple systems, no complications in that system, and very low levels of meal going in there equally. Move on with the twice-a-day spring calving systems, which again is very similar, just maybe another 200 to 300 kilos of meal, probably somewhere around half a ton of concentrate going into those. Again, they're typically probably supplying the little milk company in that situation. Then you're moving into the split calving and the autumn calving. So the split calving, where we've half the herd calving in the autumn, half the herd calving in the spring, they could be supplying any of the four processors. And that is probably the most common system that is out there. They could be supplying any of the four processors that are doing the liquid milk business as well. Move on then, you've the fully autumn calving systems, which are probably more typical in organic because the winter price was ahead of meal price up to 2 years ago, and that has reversed unfortunately now. But that calving system then, they've then broken into two categories. One is where you're purchasing in all the concentrate, and these typically would be feeding somewhere in the region of probably 2 tonne of concentrate per cow, where they're purchasing in all the concentrate, or they're homegrown, the concentrate. And I suppose that's an important point when someone is looking at organic from the outside and contemplating it as a choice, is which one of these systems do you pick? And there's a number of factors that you have to bear in mind. And your land, the fragmentation maybe of your farm, or the amount of land available to you is going to dictate to you. So if you have one block of ground, relatively compact, maybe a spring calving system might be more suitable. If you've two larger blocks separated, you can grow the crops on the outside block and keep the milking herd at home. So maybe a homegrown autumn calving system might fit in that situation. The other practical point, I suppose, when picking one of these is geography comes into play. The little milk company process their milk in Cork. They're not going to go to Donegal to collect milk. Orivo process their milk in Donegal. They're not going to come to Cork to collect their milk. So geography does play a part as to which one of these systems you're more likely to pick. The other thing I suppose we must look at is purchase concentrate at the moment is, unfortunately, it's 900 euros and probably heading to 1,000 euros a tonne at the moment, and difficult enough to source in certain situations. So the spring calving systems are less exposed to that issue at the moment, and the autumn calving systems unfortunately are quite exposed to it. So it is one of the issues as well that needs to be factored into the equation. What we do see, and it's good to see it, is we see a lot of kind of linkages between the dairy farmers and the tillage farmers this year, and we're seeing a lot of deals being done between farm to purchase concentrate directly from the tillage farms onto the dairy farms, and that is alleviating some of that issue somewhat. And there is scope to develop those linkages further. I'm going to touch on stocking rates because it's one of the first questions we always get asked, stocking rates, and I think it ties in nicely with what James and Mike covered beforehand. So again, this is touching on similar to some of the things that were discussed earlier. And this is trial work from Grange that was done by Thomas Maloney and co. A number of years back, and they looked at growing all these crops in a zero nitrogen situation. And you can see that I suppose the most important thing there is, if you look at the perennial ryegrass in particular, like it grew less than 6 tonne of dry matter in the absence of chemical nitrogen. So perennial ryegrass is a fantastic crop to grow when fed generous amounts of chemical nitrogen, but when you take that chemical and nitrogen away from it, it doesn't offer an awful lot in an organic situation when grown on its own. Yes, we would still include it in mixes because it is a very high sugar content feed and it is high in energy as a result of that. So yes, you would be including it in your mixes, but it wouldn't be the dominant species within those mixes typically. You can see all the other mixes. The red clover did almost 12 tonne, the Timothy with red clover did almost 12, Italian ryegrass and red clover did 10, perennial ryegrass and red clover did almost 11. The multi-species then, two different types of it, grew kind of a bit under 11 and a bit with 11 tonne. And I suppose it touches on again on what James said, the common word that there is key on all those bottom sixes is clover. So the multi-species, what's driving the multi-species is clover is the engine inside in the middle of all those mixes as well. So yes, perennial ryegrass will work fantastic if it's in with clover because the clover is giving it the nitrogen that it needs. But perennial ryegrass on its own is not really the most suitable species for an organic situation. If we take that the average dairy cow consumes about 5.5 tonne of dry matter in a year, and if we give that dairy cow, let's give the dairy cow half a tonne of concentrate, that means that dairy cow needs 5 tonne of dry matter to come from forage. So that's between graze grass and silage during the winter. Now, if the cow has to eat 5 tonne, we probably have to grow 6 tonne because you're going to lose somewhere in the region of 20% of what you grow through the grass dying off, grass being trampled into the ground, topping, things like that. So if you grow 6 tonne, the cow will eat probably 5 of it, or 5 of it will end up in the cow, and that's even quite efficient. So you can see there, if we work that into what's on that table, then perennial ryegrass on its own will really only support a stocking rate of 1 livestock unit per hectare, whereas all the other mixes would be shoving close to supporting 2 tonne. And you saw James's figure where he's getting grown 15 tonne, but that probably is with a much higher clover content than what was in these trials, because I have been on Kelleher and the clover content, in fairness, is seriously impressive. So it links, the amount you're going to grow is linked to the clover content as well. So it just shows where the stocking rate can go, and I think James alluded to it earlier, is that the upper limit in organics is 2 livestock units per hectare. So I think James is able to get 15 tonne and stock at 2.45 on a zero nitrogen system. So he's put a ceiling well above what the organic stocking rate limit is. So it just shows where it can potentially go. The other thing, I suppose, that impacts on stocking rate to a certain extent is soil type. It's more than to a certain extent. It is very obvious. So here's a picture of the Golden Vale, near enough to where I'm located, below in Limerick, and continued into Tipperary. Then we have this scenario here where you have a lot higher clay content soil, probably in a high rainfall area. You can see it's a beef farm in this situation. Obviously, the stocking rate capacity in those 2 pictures is going to be much different. And then we have a hill sheep farm down the west of Ireland. Again, a completely different stocking rate. So I suppose from a dairy point of view, luckily, most of them are in that top picture. So you have options to look at grown crops, reseeding ground, whereas in the bottom 2 pictures, your options for reseeding, and we wouldn't really be recommending to be reseeding those 2 bottom pictures, definitely not the one on the right. So if you have a field that looks like this, I suppose this is an important point as well. That's an amazingly species-rich sward with huge biodiversity value. And I suppose what we would be saying is you don't go reseeding that field. You stock it lower. You accept that there's going to be a lower stocking rate on that. I have a picture later of the sustainability stool, which we always see thrown out over and over again. But we have to balance the environment with the social, with the economic. And if we look at it from that, we have to acknowledge the environmental benefits that there are of pastures like this. It's probably more likely we're going to see this on a dry stock farm. And in that situation, you stock it lower, you stock it to what it can grow naturally, and you work from there. So whereas if we're looking at this, and this is where we're starting from, and we've a monoculture of ryegrass, then these are the ones that we are looking at, trying to get the clovers established into, trying to look at the multi-species, because as I say, that sward in an organic situation is just not going to perform. So if this is the one, we're putting out our slurry in the spring to grow our silage crops, we're putting out our farmyard manure in the autumn to feed the side biology, to give a slow release form of N and P in particular, and we're matching our stocking rate then to what it can grow naturally. So that's the plan of attack there. So that's an extensive organic system, if you want to call it that. It's probably operating at somewhere, if we give you one example, the Farming for Nature winner in the last 2 weeks, Sean Condon below in Limerick, would be farming very species-rich swards like that, would be stocked at 1.2, 1.3 livestock units per hectare, and that's the once-a-day spring calving system, and that's what's on that screen there is probably what will be mirrored in that system. If we go back to our monoculture ryegrass, what's our options for it? And a lot of it has been covered earlier this morning. So that's a picture from Kelleher, from where James is trial work, and you have the option of going with the white clover swards, and as James said, we can go up to 15 tonne of dry matter with these type swards. We've red clovers again, which can grow similar quantities of crops. We've the likes of combi crops, which have the potential to grow 13, 14 tonne of dry matter. And then we've the multi-species swards, which again on numerous sites have been shown to grow somewhere between 11 and 12 tonne approximately of dry matter. So each of those crops is capable of sustaining a stocking rate of up to 2 livestock units per hectare. So I suppose that's maybe what we would be calling in organic terms a more intensive organic system. So you have the first picture where we have the variety, the species diverse sward that we'd be saying leave it grow naturally, stock it to its natural capability. Probably 1 to 1.5 is where you'd be pitching that stocking rate. Or if you want to increase it, you've the option of what's on this slide, growing some of these crops, and we can pitch our stocking rate somewhere between 1.5 and 2. So, and both systems work equally well in organic. It isn't that one system is better than the other. Obviously, you'll get more output in this system, but personally, some farmers may decide that the other option is for them. Or what is most likely, again, is that half the farm will be of the species-rich mix, and half it could be these crops. So it's each farm to themselves. So that's kind of a background of what's happening out there, and I suppose who does organic suit, and from a dairy perspective in particular, what type of dairy farmer or dairy farm does it suit? And I'm going to look at it from both of those aspects, is what farmers does it suit and what farms does it suit. Because as I often say, we can convert every farm in the country to organics, but maybe we can't convert every farmer in the country to organics. So it's important to understand the difference. As I said, the sustainability stool, and we can argue all day, and it's often thrown out that sustainability is the wrong word we should be using. We should be using regenerative. We could put organic in there at the top of that stool. We can put any word you want in there, really. But it's the 3 legs are the most important part here. And those 3 legs have to be equal length, or else the stool doesn't stand up. And I think possibly maybe there's been a lot of focus on the economic leg of that stool, and maybe not enough on the social and environmental. So we have to balance the 3 legs of that stool. And if your focus as a farmer is solely on economic and you're not looking at social or environmental factors, then maybe organics mightn't be the best fit for you, would be what I would be saying. So what does the farmer that is thinking of organics, or that typically comes across, look like? So you have to be open-minded. That's the most important thing. If your mind isn't open to looking at different ways of farming, you're not going to go organic. That's it in a nutshell. We can't be worried about what the neighbours think. Let the neighbours think what the neighbours think. You have to be kind of strong-minded. You have to do what's right for your farm, and not worry what's right for the neighbour's farm, and not worry what the neighbours think is right for your farm. You have to be environmentally conscious, because you are now moving to a system that is, you're going to work closer with nature. We're looking at tools like clover to give us the nitrogen. We can't go down to the co-op to buy the 2 ton of urea anymore. We have to leave the clover do that for us. So we have to work with nature, and we have to harness what nature can deliver. So you have to be willing to, again, be open-minded to learn what nature can deliver for us. And I think the 5th point is the one that often draws people to organics, is they're looking for a challenge. Maybe they've done the conventional thing, they've taken it as far as it can go, and now they're looking for another challenge. And often organics can offer that, and it does offer a challenge because there's a higher level of technical knowledge required. If things go wrong, you can't go down to the co-op and buy the pallet of fertiliser, or you can't buy the lorry load of meal because you're paying twice for it. So you have to be planning a bit more. You have to again work with nature more, and it's a more challenging way of farming, but it can be a more stimulating way of farming too. And to quote the Dalai Lama, it's the mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. So let's give a look at the profile of farmers within the country. And if we look at the stocking rates of Irish farmers out there at the moment, there's 6,900 dairy farmers. This is dairy farmers. There's about 17,500 dairy farmers in the country. There's 6,900 of them approximately in derogation at the moment. There's another 6,000 farmers that are over 170. So they're, you could say, in derogation, but because they're exporting slurry, they're not in the derogation category. So that's nearly 13,000 farmers that are in that. But there's another 4,600 farmers that are less than 170. So these farmers are operating at a stocking rate that could work quite well in an organic setting. So if you were to ask me who's the target audience we're after out of that pie chart, it's that green segment at the top. They're the ones that are most likely, they'll have the least changes to do to their system to convince them to look at organic models. So I think that's where our focus should be. The other 2 segments of that chart, look, the reality is they are going to have to cut cow numbers to adopt an organic system. They're legally legally they're too high, so they have to come in under the 2 livestock units. So they are going to have to cut livestock numbers. If we cut livestock numbers, we cut output. So milk sales are going to be down. Yes, we probably can offset that to some extent to reduce fertiliser costs. Through the check and the post, the organic premium will offset some of that. So it depends on how far back that farmer has to come, would depend on the figures. And for some of those cohorts, yes, we can make the figures stack up. For more of those cohorts, we can't make the figures stack up because the drop in stock numbers will be too high. So the logical segment, as I say, is that green segment is the target audience that we would be targeting for organic. The national target is that we're at 2% of our land area is devoted to organics. We're trying to get to 7.5%. So it equates quite similar in farmer numbers, really. So for every 100 farmers that are out there, there's 2 of them farming organically at the moment, and we're trying to get another 5 of them to look at it. So it isn't that we're trying to convert the whole lot of the cohort of farmers to go organic. We're just looking for another 5 or 6 out of every 100 to look at organics over the next 5 to 6 years. So let's dig a bit deeper and the actual nuts and bolts on the ground. So what farm does it suit? So as I said there, it's that lowly stock farm that's already under 170 kgs of organic nitrogen per hectare, low fertiliser user, probably low meal feeding system, high clover content already on the farm. And you'll find in that situation there's minor adjustments to be made to stocking rate and to everything else on the farm to suit an organic system. You do the sums on that and it does stock up. Again, the most important thing here is the mindset, as long as the mindset matches up. Farmer number 2 is another farmer that rings my phone a lot. This farmer has gone from 80 cows to 120 cows when quotas were removed, but unfortunately the facilities didn't keep up to speed with the cow increase. And now we're looking at a farmyard that probably needs somewhere between 200,000 to 400,000 worth of investment. The milking parlour is too small, where the farmer spending 3 hours in the morning milking cows, 3 hours in the evening milking cows. There isn't enough cubicles, we're short in slurry storage, calving pens are tight, silage space is tight. So that farmer is saying, do I cut back to 80 cows and go organic, or do I spend that money and stay at my 120? And when you crunch the figures there, often it does make sense to look at the organic option. Farmer number 3 is the highly stocked derogation farmer. And I see maybe this could be where maybe we might see more farmers coming from in the future years. So we have the farmer with 100 cows on 100 acres, and the next thing is 50 acres comes up to lease outside the ditch. So what do? Do you go 150 cows on 150 acres? Our figures at the moment from Tom Fallon, our building specialist in Teagasc, would suggest that in that scenario you're going to have to spend about €8,000 per cow with current building prices to accommodate that extra 50 cows. And that includes everything from paddock infrastructure to cubicles to slurry storage to silage to calvings to calves. So it's not an insignificant sum of money. Or do you look at the 100 cows on 150 acres and consider organics? And I think this is probably where there's a lot of future opportunities for farmers. The 50 acres of the leased land coming up next door might be the bit that where it's challenging at the moment. And farmer number 4 is the new entrant. So if you have a farmer that's looking at starting up with 50 cows versus 80 cows, you have a lot less cow, you have 30 cows less to purchase, you have 30 cubicles less to build, you have slurry storage for 30 less cows, so you have a lot less set-up costs. And the other thing, it will be a lot easier to find a co-op to take your milk. A lot of the conventional co-ops have their books closed at the moment. I think that's changing slightly with some of them recently. But we have organic co-ops that are crying out looking for suppliers. So it could be an option. There is a few issues around purchasing stock in that situation that just need a bit of planning around, but nothing that can't be got around. So to summarise, in the market point of view, market opportunities do exist. There's more and more to come on stream. There is market opportunities there at the moment. The processors that are there are actively looking for suppliers. Choose an organic system that suits you and your farm, And I suppose the most important thing is to be open-minded. So, thank you.
Joe, come on back. Thank you very much. I am going to mention the war in terms of organic milk price.
Yes.
Because this year at the ploughing, for the first time ever, for anyone who doesn't know, there was an organic village, and I was by the stand of a dairy processor, and a farmer walked up to them and said, "I'm a conventional dairy farmer, what's your milk price at the minute?" And they said 50 cent, and he didn't even bother replying, he just walked away. Is that a problem?
Yes, it is. There's no point saying otherwise. It is a problem. I suppose we should point out there's 5 processors.
Yeah, and ring around.
Some of them are paying below conventional, some of them are paying above conventional. So it's not that they're all below, some are above and some are below. Look, we'd love to see it more. It would make my job an awful lot easier if there was another 5-10 cents even more on that milk price that is out there at the moment. But as I said, there is co-ops that are offering above it, so shop around. You don't have to go to that processor that is paying less than it. The other thing, look, is conventional prices at an all-time high. If you convert today, you're still going to get that conventional price for the next 2 years. And it is a complete crystal ball gazing exercise as to where both prices are going to be in 2 years' time. Is there a chicken and egg problem as well in terms of, you mentioned value-added markets, because we know historically liquid milk, very low prices for it. And we're very proud as a nation, 17,500 dairy farmers. We export a huge amount of the milk that we produce, but we don't have enough organic dairy farmers to create that value added. We don't have enough to create organic baby formula, enough to produce organic cheese on a massive scale. Is that a huge problem? Yeah, it is. Look, as I say, I'm in this job 18 months and I've been hearing about this chicken and this egg so many times in that 18 months. And with dairy, and it is really the chicken and egg scenario, because if you look at the capacity that's out there, the processing capacity that's out there at the moment, there is capacity probably to take about 200 farmers, 250 farmers at the moment, but there isn't capacity there to take 1,000 farmers. It's just not there at the moment. But there is capacity for 200, and we're struggling to get that at the moment. The scheme is open. How many do you think you'll get? How many organic dairy farmers? Dairy farmers, I don't think I'll run out of fingers. Okay. Would be the honest answer. But to go back to the chicken and egg, like what we need is, we need one of the bigger processors to come on board and to start drying milk and to look at these added value. But the bigger processors then are turning around to say to us, where's the pool of milk? We're not going to investing a couple of million on a dryer without knowing the pool of milk is there. So there is a bit of work to be done from, I think, a national point of view. How many farmers would you need to create that pool of milk? Did I hear 500 organic farmers? And yet we have 80? If I like the figure, and I think the James often quotes it, but like the amount of milk, there's about 5,000 cows, organic cows in the country at the moment, just shy of it. You probably would only turn on one of the dryers for an hour or two to dry the milk that they would send through it. So yeah, your figure there of around 500 cows would probably be, or 500 farmers would be what you'd be looking at. But there's a huge hunger there in the German market and other markets, and there is a roving mic going around if people have questions. But Sean, I also think there's an issue there in the sense that the way that the organic model is set up, that we can't compare like with like in terms of dryer size and stuff like that. We probably need one that works around the 20,000 litre model. It's one load collection, something around that. But there is a cheat, and I don't know if I should even say this, but what is to stop somebody converting to organic and selling their milk into the conventional market for the higher price? Absolutely nothing. So there are farmers doing that, unfortunately. There is, there is farmers. I suppose it's not the ideal scenario, but it might drive price. If you're to look at the end goal, and we want to get a pool of milk out there, it might be what we need to do to get to that situation. So then we have a pool of organic milk out there, and you can then turn around and say to processors, the milk is there if you want to pay for it. So it's. But there are other. You said economic isn't the only goal. There's sustainability, and I think talking even to an Austrian organic farmer recently, he was talking about they have grades where it's not just an organic premium that's being paid by the German market and the Austrian market. He's two separate organic licenses to supply both markets, but also a premium for organic hay milk that they do as well. So there's different tiers, and there is huge demand out there if we could tap into it. There's a roving mic. Does anyone have any questions from the floor?
over there. We'll go to an online question just quickly. From John, what can organic farmers or those in conversion learn from some of the biological and regenerative farmers that we're hearing this week? Have you learned anything this week?
Yeah, there's always something to be learned at BioFarm. Even this morning, like from the speakers there, like like if you look at what James is on about there in the Kelleher, like that's whether you're organic or not. That applies to every farmer in the country. If you can get a clover system that can grow a 15 tonne of dry matter stock at 2.45 and it earns you 200 or 150 euros more per hectare, sure, that's even if you take organic out of the equation, that applies to every farmer. They need to be looking at that.
And you think even if you take it a step further than just the technical end of organic dairying, what we hear quite a lot, Sean Condon was a great proponent of this. He went to once a day milking from a quality of life issue. You know, every time you look at the issues in conventional dairying, they talk about labour costs, they talk about working 80-hour a week. You can tailor it much easier in an organic system to do something slightly different. As you said, there's so many variables on it. And I think we need to start looking at, Jack Nolan mentioned as well, the whole thing about farmer safety, farmer health. And one of the things that you can probably see in an organic system is if you get it up and running properly, that you're on a much shorter term thing. And it's not all about making money, it's also about living and working in a nice environment as well.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that because I was out with a farmer recently that was looking at it, and well-established dairy farmer and quite a progressive dairy farmer, and I thought he was going to want to see the sums straight up, and I said, do you want to look at the figures? And he said no. He says, I want to see what the system is like, and he says, if I'm happy with the system, we'll make the sums work, was his answer. And it is the right way to approach it. It isn't just about the economics, like the lifestyle is huge. And the reality is, in most cases, you are going to end up milking less cows. Less cows means less stress on the land, less stress on the building, less stress on the facilities, and less stress on the farmer. Yeah. So it does offer that as well.
And I think Mike Walsh today, the length of the number of lactation per cow, so that results. Sean Condon had the same thing. Some years he didn't bother breed replacements. He didn't need them. He got those extra cows. That's a huge saving in any farm. Was it 20%, is it roughly?
Yeah.
Any question from the floor? There's
one here.
Roving microphone going around.
He's not roving quick enough, that microphone.
Okay, question. No beet industry.
Okay. It's about once a day milking on organic farms. Are many organic dairy farmers working off the farm? And if they are they practicing our once a day milking? And could you comment on once a day milking?
I can. To answer the first part of the question, I don't know of any organic dairy farmers working off the farm. They may be out there, but I can't think off the top of my head of anyone that's doing it. Once a day ties in very well with organic farming, especially the spring calving system. Obviously, it's not going to tie in with an autumn calving system, but it will tie in very well with a spring calving system because we have a concentrate that's costing 800-900 to 1,000 euros a tonne. So we're trying to minimise the amount of that in the system. So if we can get away with feeding 200-400 kilos of that concentrate in a once a day system, we can get the output. The standard figure is that you get you drop to 70% of volume, but you get 80% output because the solids are up. But you've lost the evening milking, which is the big saving from a labour point of view and a lifestyle point of view. You're getting your extra few cents, which you would be in a spring calving system at the moment, on the milk price. You're getting your check in the post, and you do the sums financially. You'll find you'll be as well off and possibly even slightly in the positive.
Yeah, and I guess to comment personally on that, we're once a day milking at home, but I'm also part of a once a day milking discussion group, and that I'd be the only organic farmer in that one, and none of them are working off farm either, and they're all conventional dairy farmers. The only difference is they're OAD. And
they won't go back to twice a day milk, which I think sells a lot.
You wouldn't. Joe, thank you very much for that.